Greetings and salutations, everyone. My name is Leah Alexander, and today I will be discussing the Moore et al. Article from 2007. So, the purpose of this article was to determine whether or not Bedtime Pass Program (BPP) is effective at treating bedtime resistance in typically developing 3 to 6-year-olds. So, what led the authors to conduct this study was the will to determine whether or not if extinction would effectively cease children leaving the bed, calling their parents, crying during bedtime, and things of that nature. So, the research hypothesis of this study, or pretty much what led the authors to conduct this study, was to determine whether or not extinction is pretty much effective at, or is it effective for children of this age that are typically developing to permanently cease, or at least lower the amount or decrease the amount that children respond or just engage in disruptive nighttime activities during bedtime. So in all, there were 19 participants. All participants were typically developing, like I said, they were from the ages of 3 to 6. There were 11 girls and 8 boys. There were also their primary caregivers, and majority of them were just their parents. So of those 19 participants, they were selected by ensuring that they had no developmental delays. That was verified by the children's parents, self-reporting of grade level functioning. Pretty much the parents just did, I guess, like some questionnaires, or they just answered questions about their child to ensure that all the kids were engaging in appropriate activities for their age level. So also another requirement was the children had to have no known sleep disruptors, so like sleep apnea or anything like that. That was also done by a self-report. It was verified by the sleep history questionnaire, SHQ. So in reference to the children's caregivers, their caregivers majority of them were Caucasian, and the median age of them, or the median age of the caregivers, was 34 years old with some college education. The research method utilized in this study, I said, was a quantitative research design. So I also said that the data collection process consisted of baseline conditions, which is where the caregivers were provided diary cards, audio tape recorders, and instructions on how to properly collect the data. The caregivers were responsible for recording the planned time of bedtime, so the time that the children were supposed to go to sleep, but they also were responsible for recording the children's actual time that they went to sleep. They also needed to record how long it took the child to quiet down. So after quiet time, they were, pretty much if you say, all right, Johnny, let's go to bed, you need to record the amount of time that it took from the time you stated that to the time it took the child to actually go to bed. They also needed to write down or record the number of times that the child left the room. So basically eloping or whatever. Also, there were 3 undergraduate psychology students who were responsible for recording the crying and calling out, because that data was coded, and the mean agreement of that was 93%. What else? During the post-test, the parents completed a survey of 8 questions to determine whether or not they believed the treatment was acceptable, because most parents, they pretty much think that allowing their children to cry through the night, or pretty much not giving your child any attention when they're screaming, crying, hollering, leaving the bed because they don't want to sleep alone, or maybe they're scared, they think that that will affect the child emotionally and possibly cause some sort of trauma. So the parents were responsible for completing a questionnaire And it only consisted of 8 questions, but pretty much they had to determine whether or not if they believed the treatment was acceptable. The authors utilized repeated measures of variance, so an ANOVA, on the statistical package SPSS to examine if the changes with experimental conditions as a between subjects variable and time within subjects factor. The results of this study indicated that the children in the control group left the room just as much during the post-test as they did during the baseline condition. The children during the bedroom pass program, or the children in the bedroom pass program condition, left the room significantly less amount of times during the post-test than they did during the pre-test. As far as the crying and calling out, the data reflects that those children in both groups, what did it say? The data reflects that those children in both groups cried and called out less and for shorter amounts of time during the post-test than during the pre-test. In reference to the amount of time that it took the children to quiet down for bedtime, there was essentially no difference in the amount of time that it took from pre-test to post-test. And just to make sure I've covered everything, let me go back to the actual article, because I feel like I missed something. I went over the participants. I went over the results. That's pretty much it. But overall, just to give you the timeline of everything that occurred, during night 1, there was study orientation, and the parents began looking over the nightly diary cards and the audio tape recordings. During night 3, there was a check-in phone call to ensure that the parents were effectively, or basically they were using procedural integrity to just make sure that they were doing everything that they were supposed to do, recording the data appropriately and just correctly and everything. So during nights 1 through 7, for the bedtime pass condition during baseline, there was only monitoring. After night 7, bedtime pass training, actually the intervention of the bedtime pass training was actually implemented. And during nights 8 through 16, the bedtime pass condition post-test, so that included the monitoring plus the pass, was conducted. And after night 16, 3 months afterwards, the authors conducted a follow-up for 3 consecutive nights. So the parents again completed the diary cards, and they also utilized the audio tape recordings. As far as the control condition or the control group, there was a check-in phone call, like I stated, on night 3, just to ensure that there was procedural fidelity or procedural integrity, either or. Nights 1 through 16, the control condition consisted of monitoring only, just to see where the kids or, the children would be, where they stood with everything. And on night 9, there was another check-in phone call. Yeah. So my question to y'all is, do y'all think that bedtime pass procedure would be effective for older kids, like kids over the age of 10? Why or why not? Peace.